My daughter's boyfriend is as old as Duke Dennis. I recently learned that my daughter Ellie has a new boyfriend Tom. This came as a surprise, as she hadn't mentioned dating anyone. Unusually for Ellie, she's been very secretive about the relationship, sharing almost no details. After spending a month in her college town, Ellie now wants to bring Tom home to meet us. Despite our limited knowledge of him, we've agreed to the visit, hoping to learn more about this important person in our daughter's life. Yesterday morning, we went to pick up Ellie and Tom from the airport to drive them to our place, and we were shocked. We knew instantly that Tom was much older than Ellie, and he certainly wasn't a college student. I was just in a state of surprise but didn't want to cause a scene, and told my husband to do the same. We drove home, but it was a frosty journey, which Ellie commented on. When we arrived, my husband pointed blank and asked Tom how old he was. Tom said he was 44. I was immediately disgusted. He's only 2 years younger than my husband and old enough to be Ellie's father. My husband continued to interrogate him, asking how they met and the whole background. Ellie explained that it was at a party and Tom was there because he's well known around the town, and they realized they had a lot in common and hit it off from there. I really didn't want to hear any more, and my husband told Tom to leave. Ellie shouted and said how unfair this was and we hadn't even given Tom a chance and that he made her happy. Tom could sense the tension, so left and Ellie followed behind him. I texted Ellie to tell her we'd love to see her and to come over to discuss the situation. She asked if Tom was welcome, and I said he wasn't. Therefore, after labeling me a judgmental a-hole, she told me she wasn't coming and that they would be staying at a local hotel and catching up with friends. I feel terrible about the whole situation and don't want to lose my daughter over it. My husband isn't budging and says he'd have to be held back if he ever saw that man again. Update. First off, I wanted to thank everyone for their comments and messages yesterday. I was overwhelmed with the responses and didn't expect my post to gain so much attention. I know opinions were quite split, but I appreciate everyone for being honest. Please accept my apologies for not responding to anyone, but there has been a lot on my mind, so I thought it would be best to provide an update for those interested. For those who haven't read the whole post, a brief summary is that my 20-year-old daughter, Ellie, brought home her boyfriend of 5 months, Tom, to our house. Tom happens to be 44, and my husband and I told Tom that he wasn't welcome in our home. Ellie and Tom are currently staying in a nearby hotel. I was incredibly down throughout most of Sunday, so I spoke to my husband and said that I really wanted to see Ellie. However, I knew that wouldn't be possible without also seeing Tom, so I mentioned to my husband about meeting Ellie and Tom at a neutral location for brunch today. I asked my husband if he wanted to join, but he said he didn't feel in the right frame of mind at this stage, so we agreed that I would go alone. I was anxious throughout the drive, but when I met Ellie, those nerves subsided relatively quickly. I was generally just happy to see her and that she was well. I still felt a bit uncomfortable around Tom, but I thought this was the opportunity to find out more about him and his intentions, as it were. We sat down and I tried to find out as much information about Tom as possible. When I asked him to elaborate on being known around a college town and being at the same party as Ellie, Tom said he used to go to the same college when he was Ellie's age, loved the place and decided to never leave. Throughout his time, he still frequented the main bars and places that college students do, which meant he remained in the community in some form. I found it quite an unsettling response but remained polite. In terms of other details I learned, Tom has never been married, nor does he have any children. He works as a software engineer and enjoys cooking and meditation in his spare time. Something felt off about him, but maybe I already had my preconceptions. Ellie spoke more about what a good match they were and how much in common they had. When I asked her to elaborate, she spoke about how they both love the same spots around town and campus, with apparently the same love of sushi, and she's never met someone so mature and understanding. Tom also said that Ellie was perfect for him and he was serious. I probed if he'd had many other relationships with younger women. Ellie didn't enjoy this question, but Tom said that he generally didn't do relationships, yet something about Ellie had drawn him in. Eventually, after about 2 hours, we ended the brunch. Ellie said how nice it had been and she was so happy I had shown an interest in Tom before asking whether they could both come to dinner some evening. I told her that would be nice, but I would have to speak to her dad. Tom shook my hand and that was that. My husband remains reluctant, but I feel it's the right thing to do if we want to maintain a relationship with Ellie. I didn't like Tom off first impressions and this hasn't done much to convince me. Something is just off there and some of his answers solidified my thoughts about him not being right for Ellie. I suppose I'll have to remain open-minded but appreciate any thoughts. Update. First off, apologies to everyone for not updating sooner and my lack of replies. I post and read everyone's replies and messages, but it's so overwhelming that I struggle to know who to respond to. However, a lot has happened in the past week and enough people asked for an update, so I thought I would provide one. For context, for those who haven't read the original post and first update, my 20-year-old daughter Ellie brought home her boyfriend, Tom, from college for the first time. He turned out to be 44, and it's been a huge shock to my husband and I. I met him, without my husband, and my daughter for brunch without feeling entirely comfortable about the situation, but my biggest priority is not losing my daughter. After I came home from brunch, I spoke to my husband about the possibility of Tom and Ellie joining us for dinner one evening. My husband was completely against it, but I told him that if we still wanted to exercise some degree of control over the situation before we pushed Ellie away entirely, this was something we had to agree to. It took a lot of convincing, but my husband agreed and we invited Tom and Ellie to come round the Saturday just gone. Before then, I ended up talking to my oldest daughter and Ellie's sister, Holly, 23, about the situation. Holly was shocked and Ellie had told her nothing. Holly decided to do some social media digging but struggled because Tom didn't have much of an online presence. She said she was coming to dinner on Saturday, although I was reluctant because it seemed like it would spiral. I eventually said yes. So, we get to the dinner on Saturday, and Holly just continually grills Tom. It was far, far worse than I did. She asked him if younger girls were his type, why someone his age is still hanging around at college parties and other small remarks. Ellie told her multiple times to leave her alone, and I tried to act as a mediator. My husband was just silently seething, and I could tell how uncomfortable he felt in Tom's presence. Eventually, Tom and Ellie said they had some big news to share. Ellie announced that she and Tom were planning to move in together for the upcoming college year. I almost spat my drink out. Ellie had planned to live with other friends, and when I questioned this, Tom answered that he realized that he probably won't have another long-term relationship. Ellie makes him so happy, and he doesn't want to waste any time with who I want to be my wife and the future mother of my children. At this point, my husband lost it and told Tom to get out of his house. Tom stood up and seemed affronted, and Ellie started crying. I couldn't remember the last time my husband had shouted like that, and I think it surprised Ellie. Holly said it was deserved and said she needed to get away from the freak. It all ended up with Ellie leaving in tears with Tom, my husband going upstairs, and I was just inconsolable. I've reached out to Ellie since, but she hasn't responded. I don't want her to move in with Tom, and it seems he's trying to derail her whole life. She's 20 and does not need to be married and have kids, especially with someone his age. She's never had a relationship before though, and she appears infatuated to the extent she's not going to listen. My husband has told me that if Ellie marries Tom, that is it, and he wouldn't want a relationship with her going forward. I can't agree with that and will always love Ellie, but it doesn't mean that the whole situation hasn't made me incredibly sad. Story 2. I'm the younger child of my moms who had 4 children. I have an older sister and twin middle sisters. Growing up, I used to be a complicated child. My sister would always get compliments about their grades and behavior at school, whereas I was always struggling with school. Well, my mom thought I was some kind of genius because I learned how to speak and read really fast, speaking at 15 months old and reading at 3, so she consulted with a lot of schools and eventually one of them accepted me at the age of 5, skipping 2 years of preschool. At the beginning, it was okay, because a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old are not so different in their interests, but when I got to higher levels, it started to get troubling. The content of classes was not of my interest, so this is what went wrong with school. Besides, at age 11 I was diagnosed with ADHD. I had to take medicine to help me go through school properly. The medicine I took was really strong and it had me emotional most of the day. I was bullied for crying over small things, and having no appetite was an issue, because I hate my body. I hated being a skinny kid. I wanted to be chubby, because I always saw chubby people as more attractive. That's my thing. It got worse. I entered high school at the age of 13, whereas all the other teenagers were 15 or so. So, while I was worried about the next Power Rangers season and rewatching all the seasons of Digimon, they were all thinking about girlfriends, their first drink, and even rugs. Needless to say, I had no friends at all at high school and a lot of bullies. I joined college at age 16. My mother was really proud because my sisters didn't do it in the first attempt. All of them had to join private universities because they couldn't get into a public one, but that's the problem here. I was 16, had no childhood because I had no friends at all growing up, and there I was in a room full of people who were over 20 years old. My whole class hates me, because I was too immature to be there. Well, this was also the year my mom found out I'm gay. She gave me a call, telling me she had the biggest disappointment of her life. I was a curse and that I should have passed away when I was 2. I choked on a plastic flower for 2 hours or so, before someone could remove it so I could breathe. My relationship with her never recovered from that. Ever since, she refused to pay for my medicine, even though I was unemployed and... Well, I see a lot of stories here about people who started working really soon, but I live in Brazil and the law here is that teenagers, under 18, can't work, and if they do, the employer might get in trouble. So, I had no money and my ADHD kicked in from there. I managed to get through the first 3 years of college very well. I didn't fail any disciplines, except for one which I failed because attendance. My mom took me to her house in another city at the beginning of the semester and refused to send me back sooner alone, which caused me to lose 3 weeks of class, which was worth 24 absences, when the failing cap was 21. But from the 4th year on, I had problems with my attention to the subjects. I study veterinary medicine, and from the 4th year on the subjects start getting very specific. For example, we had to study medical clinic for equestrians and bovines. I hate studying horses and bulls, so it was difficult. I have been failing at least one subject for the past 6 years. Next year I'll be there for 11 full years without graduating. Thanks, untreated ADHD, you rock. I have seen all of my friends graduate, yet here I am still a year away from my graduation, if I pass all the subjects. My failures didn't bother me at all in the beginning. I was young and started way too soon. It was okay if I had to wait a few more years to graduate. My best friend also finished and she helps me a lot with doubts from difficult subjects. The problem is, my mom hates when I fail, and every time she hears I failed, she would go on a rant for hours, calling me useless and lazy. She loves telling me how incompetent I am, that if I listened to her advice I would be a God's man and a successful person. It's one of her favorites. She also likes to call me stupid and tell me that me being gay is the problem, because I don't hide my sexuality. She proceeds to yell about how she sacrificed her youth to raise 4 children alone. She divorced my father when I was 3, and how she's tired of working to keep my luxury. Now here, keep in mind that mom earns 7,000 Brazilian reais a month and spends like 200 Brazilian reais with me when I need something like new clothes or food that she offers herself to buy for me. I do have a small job now and pay for most of my stuff, and we share the bills. I pay internet and water. She pays light. We don't have gas bills in Brazil. She's constantly reforming our house, changing things. She recently bought a new car even though we already have 2, and spends around 500 Brazilian reais with her hair every 2 weeks. Yet she insists I spend all of her money. Besides, she didn't live with me until this year's May. That's when she got a job in my city and came to live with me. It didn't go well. The humiliating speeches have been on since 2013, when I joined college, and it continues to this day. So, after the pandemic I haven't been feeling well. I was worried that I was getting depressed and wanted to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, but my mom just said I should pray to God to set free of it and refused to believe me that it was that serious. So, in the last month, my life took a terrible turn. My boyfriend broke up with me, my anxiety was kicking in to the point my blood pressure would blast off at the minimum sign of stress, college was not going well, and my mom being here, constantly humiliating and degrading me, was not helping. So at the end of semester I fail another subject. I know my mom's here and she won't let it pass. I can't help but have a panic attack and start crying. I cry so hard I start coughing, and I cough so hard I vomit. The desperation gets to the point when I think I would rather take my life than spend another year in failure and humiliation. So I take a full bottle of pills and lay down, waiting for it to be over. It doesn't work, and my sisters are worried about me. The panic attack is over and I start thinking better about it, and it hits me that I didn't have a reason to do that. Besides, I was not ready to keep hearing my mother's humiliation over and over again. I decided I will not let her speak to me or my sisters like that ever again. You might think that was the story, right? Well, it wasn't. The important part of the story is what happened last week. My mom decided to take my medical history to the university and ask for the support of my teachers. Now that she sees that college almost had me done with my life, they say it's all set, but they need to meet with me before they proceed. I attended a meeting with my courses coordinator and with a psychologist from CSI, Center of Support to Inclusion. As soon as I entered the psychologist's office, she didn't mind me. I tell her, "Hi, I'm Op. I'm studying at vet school and I have ADHD. She doesn't seem impressed by this part, and then I say the magic words, "I'm my mom's son." As soon as she hears my mother's name, something snaps inside of her. She immediately tells me to sit down and tells her assistant to leave the room because she needs to talk to me in private. So, let me ask you, did you refuse to accept you have ADHD? What took you so long to bring up your medical history? I'm shocked and I reply, I thought my mom had brought it before because I was a minor when I joined. Well, your mom came in here with a very weird story, saying you tried to unalive because of what a teacher said. She also mentioned the bad influence of a friend, a boyfriend, and the problems you had with your father. Oh, well. I never told my mom those were the reasons for my attempt to unalive myself. The teacher talked to me 2 days after the attempt. He had nothing to do with it, and he only told me that there was no possible way I could recover my lost grades, so it was failing or failing. She also blames my best friend because when I met her, she didn't find the way my mom treated me. Up until my 20s, she treated me like a child, like I had no permission to sleep over or to go anywhere with my friends without her knowing. My friend told me I should cut the umbilical cord, and she was right. When my mom stopped treating me like that, I felt way better. My ex-boyfriend was not a problem at all. We broke up on good terms, although I still miss him to this day, but it was not reason enough for me to try to unalive myself. I haven't spoken to my father for 4 years now. We had a complicated relationship because my father left me really soon in my life, as I said, the age of 3, and he never tried to be close to me or my sisters. He used to pay for child support, but then in the middle of the pandemic, with me having serious economic problems, he sued me to stop paying for child support even though I was still in college. In Brazil, the law is that you pay it until your kid graduates or turns 24. I was 23 during pandemic. I would be okay with that, because I did have a job and I could spare a little, but he had just engaged with a woman who had a 3-year-old son, and when I visited them, I saw the kid with a tablet, a video game, his own cell phone with internet, a ton of automatic toys, and etc. To help you with the math, my child support was 500 Brazilian reais. The tablet his stepson was holding is around 1,900 Brazilian reais. So, well, he couldn't afford to pay 500 Brazilian reais to support me. But he could buy a tablet which was 4 times this value to the other boy. I don't hate the boy, just my father. I actually helped take care of him and played with him a lot when I visited, because I really like children. I might be jealous because my father is giving him what he never gave me, but I have no hard feelings against him. It's not his fault that my father prefers to give support to another man's child instead of his own. This also includes my sisters who never had anything but child support from him. That was the last I heard from my father, and it bothered me to the point I changed my name. I was a junior, I'm not anymore. Well, those are all different things in which I didn't think a bit while attempting against my life. The psychologist hears it all and she is gagged. When she asks about my relationship with my mother, I say it's complicated, and as she keeps asking deeper questions, I tell her everything I told you above. The psychologist asks me if I have already told her about my feelings when I tried to unalive myself. I say that not yet, and she's worried. She says my mom also needs therapy, because she can't take the blame for her actions. All the pressure and humiliation she has put me through needs to be worked on. I left the office impressed with what my mom can make up to get rid of her guilt, but I'm not surprised. My mom never really apologized for her mistakes with anyone, neither me nor my sister nor anyone in our family. She always blames it on someone or something else and says she wouldn't have done it if another person had done something different. P.S. Well, yesterday, I did tell my mom that she was the reason I attempted to unalive myself, not in a gentle way. She had a tooth surgery and my sister spent the whole week taking care of her. Yesterday, my sister wanted to see a friend and she freaked out about it, calling my sister a partygoer and irresponsible. I replied that she deserved it, but my mom said I shouldn't say anything since much like her I am. Guess what? Useless and unwanted. So I proceeded to tell go ahead, say that, next week you can lie to the psychologist about it to get rid of your guilt of when I tried I didn't try to do it because of anyone but you. Yet here you are repeating the same things you did for all those years until it almost unalived me. She started crying and isolated herself for the whole day. She didn't speak to me until now. She went on a trip to her birthplace with my sister and they will be back only next week. I don't know how things are going to be when they come back.